Joanna of Castile is best known by her nickname Joanna the Mad. But was she truly insane? Infanta Joanna of Castile and Aragon was born in 1479 to Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon, the famed Catholic monarchs who united Spain but also started the Spanish Inquisition. Joanna was the middle child, having 3 sisters and 1 brother. While the oldest 2 children, Isabella and John, were prepared to become rulers one day, the 3 younger daughters also received a broad education. Even though their fate was to form important alliances by marrying influential men, Joanna was said to be extremely well educated. Her schedule included studying law, writing, reading, history, philosophy, mathematics, and multiple foreign languages. Joanna was supposedly fluent in French, Latin, and all 3 Iberian Romance languages. Besides, the young princess was an avid falconer, hunter, dancer, and she played multiple instruments. While all children received an excellent education, they were all expected to commit to a strict Catholic lifestyle, which Joanna in particular soon grew wary of. In 1496, Joanna was the first of the siblings to be married. The chosen husband was Philip of Flanders and Austria, son of the Holy Roman Emperor. Only 16 years old, Joanna was excited to leave her strict household. The marriage started off brilliantly, as it was said to be love at first sight for both of them. Life could have been mundane, but tragic events were coming Joanna's way. Her brother John died mere months after his marriage to Margaret in 1497, and his daughter was stillborn shortly after. Less than a year later, in August 1498, Joanna's sister Isabella died giving birth to her son Miguel, who himself would die in July 1500. These turns of events left Joanna to be the heir to both Castile and Aragon at 18 years old. By that time, Joanna was 7 months pregnant and her whirlwind marriage had already turned sour. Philip's constant infidelity and his struggle to remain in power amidst the political turmoil in Austria was wearing Joanna's mental health down. She is said to have been extremely jealous of her husband's extramarital adventures. On one occasion, she even physically attacked one of Philip's mistresses. While we are not looking for excuses here, it must be mentioned that Joanna was almost constantly pregnant between 1497 and 1507. Joanna was fulfilling her duty to produce multiple heirs when her mother Isabella I of Castile died in 1504, leaving Joanna Queen Regent of Castile. As it was uncommon for women to succeed their parents, Joanna's rule was endangered the second she took charge. It wasn't only her husband who tried to strip Joanna of her power, but also her own father. All while Joanna was close to giving birth to her daughter Mary in September 1505. While Ferdinand and Philip were conspiring to exclude Joanna from ruling, tragedy hit yet again. After falling severely ill suddenly, Philip died in September 1506 at the age of 28. Pregnant and heartbroken, Joanna was distraught. In the aftermath of Philip's death, rumors of Joanna's madness started seriously spiraling. Customs demanded for Philip to be buried in Burgos. However, Joanna wanted him laid to rest in the royal chapel of Granada, which was reserved for Castilian royalty only. This meant that Philip's body had to be moved almost 700 kilometers south, which did take forever back in the day. Different versions of how Joanna handled Philip's corpse have been delivered. Accusations of her regularly opening the coffin to talk with Philip's corpse and hugging him were circulating, which left the madness rumors spiraling. During her journey to Granada, a regency council was set up for Joanna without her consent, and her older 4 children were taken from her by her father-in-law, the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian. He sent his grandchildren to the court of his daughter and their aunt, Margaret of Austria, now governess of the Netherlands, where Joanna's offspring would be raised for most of their childhood. Simultaneously, plague and famine were ravaging Castile, leading to desperation and discontent amongst the commoners. When in the summer of the same year, Joanna's father Ferdinand II returned to Castile, his arrival coincided with the lessening of the plague and famine. The Castilian court and the commoners were relieved. Projecting these events on Ferdinand's return to Castile, Joanna's stance was weakened even more. Eventually, she was pressured by her father to give up her royal powers. Even worse, Joanna's father had her confined to the palace of Tordesillas, beginning in February 1509, alongside her younger children Ferdinand and Catherine. In the meantime, Ferdinand was named administrator of Castile. Isolating Joanna even more, her loyal servants were replaced by Ferdinand's, who followed his orders on how to treat Joanna. Confined to the dark palace of Tordesillas in a vulnerable state of mind, Joanna must have suffered greatly. Even though no one from the outside world but her servants and her father had seen Joanna for years, rumors of the queen's madness continued to spread. In 1516, Joanna's father died, which posed the question of regency once again. Her adult children, Eleanor and Charles, came to see their mother in Tordesillas. Joanna must have hoped to be finally released from her confinement. However, Charles did not have her released, nor did he improve his mother's living conditions. And not only that, Charles eventually proclaimed himself as the King of Castile and Aragon, completely ignoring his mother's right to the throne. As Joanna had no one to fend for her, this coup would go mostly undisputed. In 1518, her youngest son Ferdinand was sent abroad to be out of his brother's way. Over the years, Joanna's health declined severely, which does not come as a surprise. Joanna had missed out on all of the big life events of her children. Her daughter Isabella married Christian II of Denmark in 1515, Eleanor married Manuel of Portugal in 1518, and Mary married Louis II of Hungary and Bohemia in 1521. Her usurping son Charles would become the elected Holy Roman Emperor alongside his rule of Aragon and Castile, and Ferdinand controlled much of Eastern Europe through his wife, Anne of Bohemia and Hungary. In 1524, her daughter Catherine was the last to leave her side to marry John III of Portugal. Joanna spent the last decades of her life vegetating in a solitary confinement with little to no visitors. Her lovely son Charles ordered the servants to not speak to Joanna anymore, as no good would come of it. Moreover, his mother was ought to shrive and repent against her will. After 48 years of confinement, Queen Joanna of Castile passed away all alone in the palace of Tordesillas. The truth about Joanna's presumed insanity is debated until this very day. It is impossible to diagnose someone with a mental illness 500 years later. However, many historians speculate that Joanna did suffer from either schizophrenia and/or depression. Joanna's family was notorious for inbreeding, which does forward mental illness. It has to be noted that Joanna's maternal grandmother, Isabella of Portugal, was also deemed to be mad, and so were a lot of Joanna's further offspring. On the other hand, Joanna's alleged madness was often connected to her behavior surrounding her husband Philip. She openly flaunted her desire for him and her jealousy, which probably went against the strict court etiquette that was expected from a royal princess. Joanna was young and madly in love, and while she did show great jealousy, Was that really a sign of madness, considering that her husband cheated on her constantly, even when she was going through pregnancy for almost 10 years straight? When Philip died, her unapologetic grief for him also went against the etiquette, since Joanna didn't keep her composure as it was expected of her. Another point that was used against Joanna was her lacking devotion to the Catholic Church. While her parents were deeply pious, Joanna refused to attend the Mass as a teenager as a sign of rebellion against her parents, but also because she did question the Catholic beliefs. Considering that her parents let loose the Spanish Inquisition during Joanna's lifetime, which brought death and torture over so many people on the Iberian Peninsula, it is truly questionable who history defines as mad. Beside her alleged character flaws, Joanna was also a threat to male power during her lifetime. Castile was one of the few kingdoms to have a female line of succession. All the men in her life were hungry for power, whether it was her father, her husband, and her own son. Joanna was always in the way to their ultimate power. As a young woman, Joanna was said to be very headstrong and intelligent, which was a threat to the men around her. Sadly, no one was on her side, and as she was pregnant and cast to the sideline most of the time, she wasn't a present figure to her people, so it was easy to skip her claims to the throne. Whether or not Joanna had previously suffered from mental illness, her mental stability took a hit by the abuse she suffered during her imprisonment. In my personal opinion, I feel like there is some bias towards Joanna of Castile and her presumed madness. If we take a look at Henry Tudor, who lived during the same era as Joanna, most of us will remember that he had many of his wives beheaded and declared himself leader of his own church. No one dared to put him into confinement, unfortunately, even though it would have saved a few heads on the way, and he's also not referred to as Henry the Mad, even though his love for Anne Boleyn was more of an obsession as well, and his later actions seem more mad to me than anything I've ever read about Joanna of Castile. While we will never know the true extent of Joanna's mental struggles, it is safe to say that she is one of the most tragic figures in Spanish royal history.